Yo, what's up, everyone? So today we're doing something a little different. We're gonna put on our lawyer hats and figure out what if Walter White got busted right after season 1 of Breaking Bad? Like, forget everything that happens later. No Gus, no Empire, no I am the one who knocks. Just good old desperate Walt cooking in an RV with Jesse. And here's the twist. What if he got the best criminal defense attorney money could buy? Not Saul Goodman pulling tricks out of his sleeve, but like a legitimate, top-tier defense lawyer. How would they argue his case? Could they actually get his sentence reduced? Because here's the thing, season 1, Walt is a very different person from later seasons. He's not a kingpin yet. He's a terrified high school teacher with cancer who made some absolutely terrible decisions. And in the legal world, that context, that matters a lot. So let's break this down, charge by charge, defense by defense, and figure out if Walt could have actually walked away with something less than life in prison. Let's get into it. What did Walt actually do in season 1? Alright, first things first, before we can defend the guy, we need to know what we're defending him against. And honestly, even in just season 1, Walt racked up quite the rap sheet. So let's list it out. The obvious stuff, manufacturing the blue stuff. Like, a lot of it. That's the big one. Distributing it through Jesse and eventually to Tuco conspiracy charges because, he's doing this with Jesse. The chemistry experiment gone wrong, that whole mercury fulminate situation with Tuco. Walt literally walks into a drug dealer's lair with what's essentially a homemade explosive. Now, he doesn't actually blow anything up in season 1, but he's got this illegal substance and he's using it as a weapon. And then, the heavy stuff, Emilio, remember him? Jesse's partner who ends up breathing in phosphine gas in the RV. That's a body. Crazy 8. Walt keeps him locked in Jesse's basement for days, then ultimately, with the bike lock. That's body number 2. So we're looking at substance manufacturing, distribution, conspiracy, illegal explosives, kidnapping, and 2 counts of ending someone's existence. And here's what makes this complicated. The feds love stacking charges. They're not going to just charge you with one thing when they can charge you with 15. It's like going to a restaurant and the waiter's like, would you like some charges with your charges? But, and this is important, at the end of season 1, Walt hasn't been caught yet. Hank's investigating Heisenberg, but he has no idea it's his brother-in-law. There's no arrest, no raid, no charges filed. This is all hypothetical. Like, what if the DEA kicked down that door right after the season 1 finale? The prosecution's case. How bad is it? Okay, so if you're the prosecutor looking at this case, you're probably feeling pretty confident. You've got physical evidence. The RV exists. The product exists. There are transaction records. 2 bodies that can be connected to Walt and Jesse. Lab equipment, precursor chemicals, the whole setup. On paper, this looks like a slam dunk. You could easily argue for life in prison, especially once you add those 2 fatalities into the mix. The feds have this thing called the drug-related murder enhancement under federal law. Basically, if someone dies during a substance-related offense, they can throw the book at you hard. We're talking mandatory minimums that make your regular sentence look like a parking ticket. But here's where it gets interesting. The prosecution's case isn't actually perfect. Think about it. No wiretaps, no long-term surveillance, no cooperating witness. Jesse's not talking. Hank doesn't know Walt is Heisenberg. All the evidence is circumstantial until they actually find something concrete. So yeah, they've got a strong case, but it's not airtight. And that's where a good defense attorney starts to see opportunities. Building the defense. The human angle. Now, if I'm Walt's defense attorney, I'm not going to walk into court and be like, Your Honor, my client is totally innocent. Because, come on, there's a lab, there are bodies, that's not going to fly. Instead, I'm going for mitigation. I'm trying to make the jury see Walt as a human being, not a monster. Here's the narrative I'm building. Walter White is a 50-year-old high school chemistry teacher. He's got a pregnant wife, a teenage son with cerebral palsy, and a fresh diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer. His doctor gave him maybe 2 years to live. This guy has been living paycheck to paycheck his entire life. He's been washing cars on the weekend to make ends meet. He's got maybe $10,000 in savings, and his medical bills are about to be in the hundreds of thousands. He's not a criminal. He's never been arrested, never even gotten a speeding ticket. This is a man who spent his entire career trying to inspire kids about science, and now he's facing death with nothing to leave his family except debt. Then he snaps, not because he's greedy, not because he's power hungry, because he's terrified. Terrified of leaving his family with nothing, terrified of being forgotten, terrified of dying without making any kind of impact. Does that excuse what he did? Absolutely not. But does it make him a hardened criminal who deserves to rot in a cell forever? That's what we're arguing. Now, tackling the serious charges, the 2 bodies. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say the two elephants? Emilio and Crazy 8 didn't make it out of season 1 alive, and that's a problem for Walt's defense. Because prosecutors are gonna push for murder charges, and murder charges are what turn a maybe he gets out in 10 years into a he's never seeing daylight again. So how do we handle this? Emilio's situation. This one's actually the more defensible of the two. Emilio's ending came from phosphine gas exposure during the cook in the RV. Walt didn't intend to eliminate him. It was essentially a horrible accident during an already illegal activity. The prosecution's gonna try for felony murder. That's when someone dies during the commission of a felony, even if you didn't mean to hurt them. Like, if you rob a bank and your partner accidentally shoots someone, you both get charged with murder. But here's the thing. In New Mexico, felony murder requires the underlying crime to be inherently violent. Manufacturing substances? That's not necessarily considered violent. Dangerous? Yes, but not automatically violent, so we're pushing for criminally negligent homicide instead. That's basically, you did something reckless that led to someone's demise, but you didn't intend it. In New Mexico, that's a 4th-degree felony with a maximum of 18 months. That's a huge difference from murder. Crazy 8's situation, this one's trickier. Walt kept this guy locked in Jesse's basement for days, then ultimately strangled him with a bike lock. That looks premeditated. That looks like murder one. But here's our defense. Imperfect self-defense. Walt did see Crazy 8 hiding a broken plate shard. He had a reasonable belief that this guy was going to use that weapon on him the second he got free. It's not perfect self-defense because Walt created the situation by kidnapping him in the first place, but it's imperfect self-defense because his fear was legitimate in that moment. We're arguing this down to voluntary manslaughter, a heat of passion situation. Still serious, but it's not murder. We're looking at maybe 3 to 6 years instead of 15 to life. The kidnapping and explosives charges. Let's knock out a couple of the other charges real quick. Kidnapping. Yeah, Walt definitely kept this guy locked up. That's kidnapping under both federal and state law. But here's what we argue. Walt was acting out of necessity. He genuinely believed that if he let Crazy 8 go, he'd come back and eliminate both him and Jesse. He wasn't holding him for ransom or to harm him. He was paralyzed by fear and indecision. We're trying to get this knocked down to false imprisonment, which is a lesser charge. Still bad, but way less time. The mercury fulminate incident. Remember when Walt walks into Tuco's office and throws that crystal on the ground like he's in an action movie? Yeah, possessing unregistered explosives is definitely illegal. But here's the thing, in season 1, he doesn't actually blow anything up. He demonstrates it, sure, but no one gets hurt. No property damage. Our defense? Walt was using it as a deterrent, not a weapon. He's a chemistry teacher showing a scientific principle to protect himself. Did he know it was classified as a regulated explosive? Maybe not. This charge is weak, and in a plea deal, we'd push to have it dropped entirely. The mental state argument. Now let's talk about Walt's headspace, because this is where a good defense attorney can really make an impact. We're bringing in a psychological evaluation. Not to argue insanity, Walt clearly knew right from wrong, but to show diminished capacity and extreme emotional disturbance. This guy just got a terminal diagnosis. That does something to your brain. It's not an excuse, but it's a reason. People make irrational decisions when they're staring down their own mortality. We bring in his cancer diagnosis, medically documented testimony from Skylar about his mental state, his clean record, 50 years without a single arrest. We're painting a picture of a man who had a complete psychological break, not a career criminal, not someone who belongs in a maximum security prison for the rest of his life. And here's the kicker, compassionate release. Under the First Step Act, federal inmates with terminal illnesses can apply for early release if they have less than 18 months to live. Walt's cancer prognosis? About 2 years, and that's with treatment. This becomes a huge bargaining. The plea deal. What's realistic? Alright, so here's where the rubber meets the road. We're not going to trial. Going to trial is a gamble, and with the evidence they have, it's a gamble Walt would probably lose. Instead, we're negotiating a plea deal. Here's what we're offering the prosecution. Walt pleads guilty to conspiracy to distribute, that's the big federal charge, voluntary manslaughter for Crazy 8, criminally negligent homicide for Emilio, possession of precursor chemicals. In exchange, they drop first-degree murder charges, kidnapping explosives charges, money laundering. Barely any in season 1 anyway. Any charges against Skylar or his family. The sentence we're pushing for, 8 to 12 years, with credit for time served and eligibility for compassionate release after 3 years due to his terminal illness. Now, is the prosecution gonna love this? Number. But here's why they might take it. It guarantees a conviction without a lengthy trial. It avoids the bad PR of throwing a dying teacher in prison forever. they still get to say they put a substance manufacturer behind bars. They avoid the risk of a jury sympathizing with Walt realistically. If Walt goes to trial and loses everything, he's looking at life plus 30 years. Easy. If he goes to trial with a good defense and some jury sympathy, maybe 20 to 30 years. With the plea deal, 3 to 5 years, with early release on medical grounds. That's the difference between dying in prison and maybe seeing his family again. So there you have it. Could Walter White have gotten off easy after season 1? Not exactly. He still did some pretty horrible things, and he'd still be going to prison, but with the right defense, the right narrative, and the right plea deal, yeah, he could have gotten his sentence knocked down to something way more manageable than life without parole. The key is that season 1 Walt is defensible in a way that later seasons Walt absolutely isn't. He's not a kingpin yet. He's not ordering hits. He's not poisoning children. He's a desperate dying man who made catastrophic choices, and in the legal system, that narrative matters. Of course, the absolute best defense would have been to just not do any of this in the first place. But where's the fun in that? Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Walt deserved a lighter sentence for season 1? Or should the legal system have thrown the book at him regardless? Hit that like button if you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe for more hypothetical legal breakdowns, and I'll catch you in the next one.